Here's another show you can enjoy in the True Story FM family of entertainment podcasts.
Hey, movie lovers, I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson. We are the hosts of the Next Reel Film Podcast.
If you're passionate about films like we are, you'll love our show. Each week, we dive deep into a movie, discussing everything from the story and performances to the cinematography and score.
Not to mention budgets and awards. We have covered iconic series like Francis Ford Coppola's The Godfather trilogy, examining themes of power, family, and the dark side of the American dream.
We've explored the works of groundbreaking directors like Catherine Bigelow, discussing her mastery of tension.
We've looked at heist films, great car chases, great years in film, couples on the run, and more.
Our discussions go beyond the surface, examining what makes each film tick. We believe that when the movie ends, the conversation begins.
And we'd love for you to join that conversation. Find the Next Reel Film Podcast on your favorite podcast app or at thenextreel.com.
The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Hello, world. Welcome to the Adrian Moment on True Story FM. I'm Ocean, and I'm joined as always by my partner in sports movies dissection, Jim Pullen.
What's going on today, Ocean?
Living the dream. Thanks for asking.
Yes.
What's going on with you, Jim?
Just living the same, not your dream, but I'm living my dream the best that I can. And, reminiscent of yesteryear from time to time,
Really? Yeah. Well, we spend a lot of time, as we get older, spending a lot of time reminiscing about the past and when we were younger. So what is catching your imagination right now?
Well, I am reminiscing about the days of my younger little life. I was like 4 years old and playing hockey, man. Like putting on those skates the first time, hearing the sound of the blade cutting the ice.
At 4?
Yeah, man.
Should you tell the people whether or not you're secretly Canadian?
No, I'm not. No, 100% good old American. Born and bred in California. That's where I started playing hockey too, which is crazy because most people don't associate hockey with California, but
no, although, California is known for its ice.
Very much so.
Yes. Yeah.
The diamonds of ice.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah, the diamonds on Rodeo Drive. There's lots of ice right there.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, no, I'm just always thinking about some of those times, how lucky I was that my parents drove my brother and I to hockey practice, and he was a couple of divisions ahead of me. So my practice was like at 5:00 in the morning, and his practice was like at 6:30 or 7:00. And so sometimes spending the whole day at the ice rink, and then my games, his games, traveling up and down the coast, going to Canada for hockey. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, that all sounds too young I'm sorry, not too young, too early, 5:00 in the morning to practice and everything. That sounds crazy. So did your parents get you into it? Like, was your brother already into it and you were kind of brought along because they were there already? Or did you have an interest independent of him?
No, most likely it was because my brother, he's 8 years older than me. So, he was already playing, well established as a dominant goalie actually in California. And so because I was the younger brother, of course I wanted to be just like big brother. And so I probably bugged the living daylights out of my parents. When can I play? When can I play? When can I play? And coincidentally, his coach was also my coach. So I got to play a little earlier than everybody else. Kind of like a coach's pick,
Oh,
so
nice.
So I got to play as a mite for quite a while, actually a little bit longer than most people. But
and what's a mite? Like what age?
It's like
is
the
that?
first age group. That's like I don't remember the age cutoff. I want to say it's like maybe 6 or 7. Maybe,
so from
8.
So from 4 to 7.
Yeah.
Oh,
and at the time,
okay.
and well, maybe it's even later than that. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, so when I first started playing, I was playing, and then they had like an age group change. So I think I got to stay in mites longer as well. So I started earlier than everybody, and I got to stay a little bit longer. So I want to say I probably played mites until like I was like 9 or 10, actually.
Oh, really? That's a long time in one division. So were you also a goalie, or were you? Did you play offense, defense? What'd you do?
I actually did a little bit of it all. Tried goalie because, I wanted to emulate my brother. Could not do that all that well. But my last couple of years, I ended up playing D, but I was like a D hybrid at the time because I was one of the only ones that could actually like skate and handle the puck a little bit. So I scored a lot of goals my last couple of years playing in Belmont, California.
Nice, nice. And how old were you when you stopped?
12. So we moved from California to Washington and played only a couple of years up here and opted to just go ahead and focus more on baseball. That was more of my sport anyways, but I still enjoy getting out on the ice and skating. Yeah.
What is your favorite hockey movie?
My favorite hockey movie is Miracle.
Want to hear an amazing story? Back in 1960, Coach Brooks was on the Olympic hockey team. But a week before the games, his coach cuts him and sends him home. And that team went on to win the gold medal without him.
Herb Brooks had given up his dream of Olympic glory until 20 ordinary kids
Why'd you want to play hockey? Isn't it obvious? For the girls?
gave him a second chance.
The Soviets win. My goal is to beat them at their own game. Beat the best team in the world.
Gold medalists in 64, 68, 72, 76.
Name?
Mark Johnson.
Buzzy Schneider.
Mike Ruzioni. You're missing some of the best players.
Not looking for the best players, Craig. I'm looking for the right ones.
They were bitter rivals,
A lot of guys from Minnesota and Boston.
Yeah, that's gonna work.
but one coach had a plan to turn them into a team.
I got no time for quitters.
You want me to play, huh?
I want you to be a hockey player! I am a hockey player! Think that'll get them going?
Oh, yeah.
When you face the impossible,
Russians' main weapon is intimidation.
This guy's ever smile?
The Russians, they get shot if they smile.
and you refuse to give up,
I didn't think it was gonna be this hard.
Yeah, you did.
We start becoming a team right now.
miracles can happen.
When you pull on that jersey, the name on the front is more important than the one on the back. Michael Ruzioni.
Who do you play for?
I play for the United States of America. Welcome to the Olympics, gentlemen.
Walt Disney Pictures presents
This is something that this country is ready for.
Great moments are born from great opportunity. If we played them 10 times, they might win 9, but not this game. Listen to them. We can beat these guys.
Discover the story
This is your time.
behind the greatest moment in sports history.
Miracle, really? Why is Miracle your favorite movie?
It's the realest sports movie, especially for the genre of sport hockey. Like all the other hockey movies, no disrespect to the Alaska ones, the Mighty Ducks, if you want to, say the Mighty Ducks series.
I would argue the
Slapshot.
Mighty Ducks. I would argue the Mighty Ducks count.
Yeah,
I mean, it's kids hockey movie. It's like Bad News Bears. That counts as a baseball movie, even though it's kids.
absolutely it does. Bad
Yeah.
News Bears for life.
Yeah.
Sorry, those are some good memories right there. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, Miracle is an amazing movie to me. It's just it's the realest sports movie, because it made me feel like I was skating again. The the sounds that you hear in the movie it's just like it's just like being on the ice, just like you're out there skating amongst the team and amongst the guys skating around. The feel of it, just the story that it tells. I mean, come on. Like the 1980 Olympics. I'm sure I was only 4 years old, but I remember playing hockey 4 or 5 years old and, hearing the chants of USA and hearing and feeling like, hey, you're coming up against this tough team. Let's be like team USA and let's bond together and let's go and win this tough game.
Nice, nice. So they were actually chanting USA, but in your league, both teams would have been American, right?
Right. No.
I didn't know if you were going against the 4-year-old Russian team, in which case that's
The
awesome.
4-year-old, yeah, that was awesome. We
Yeah.
got our asses handed to us. Thank you.
Okay. Had they been playing together since they were in diapers?
Yes, exactly.
You guys were a ragtag group of
In
4-year-olds
utero.
put together.
They play in utero.
In utero. Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree a lot with Miracle. Miracle is an amazing movie. It is about not only because the overarching story, of course, is about the 1980 Olympic hockey team, Winter Olympic hockey team for the United States, and their journey and struggle to beat the mighty Russian team to win a medal in the Olympics, and so. And I like how the movie not only takes the hockey story, but also intertwines kind of a lot of the geopolitical things. There's various speeches of Jimmy Carter throughout it, to then give you context of geopolitically what is going on and what it means for those Olympics at that time for these athletes that are representing their country. But I enjoyed it for that reason, and I enjoyed it for many other reasons as well.
Which I'm eager to get to, Ocean, because I know you're not like the biggest hockey fan in the whole world, right?
I am not. I absolutely I'm not. And that is and that's I guess we can jump right there. So that is part of one of the reasons why this movie works for me so well, is that it is a movie that you do not need to be a hockey fan at all to enjoy. I enjoy this movie thoroughly. I have seen it multiple times. I would argue that in my life, I've been to one minor league hockey game, and then I went to one Seattle Kraken game. And outside of those games, the most hockey I've ever seen in my life is in this movie. Live sports are always, I find live sports entertaining, even if you don't like the sport a lot of the times. And that's, because there's going to be, typically you're going to go with friends, you're going to have a good time. There's going to be a lot going on, but in live sports do bring something special to them. But then inside of that, as far as with movies goes, I don't ever watch hockey on television. I watch it even less than baseball, which, as we've covered when talking about 61, I don't watch a lot of baseball.
Right.
But this movie, I feel that works because you have so many other things to grab onto. Not only the story of the journey of the team. I think it starts with the journey of Coach Herb Brooks and how he had a model that was in his head of how he could, mold an American team to compete with the Russians. Because one of the things that is brought up in this movie that is lost over time is the goal for this team wasn't to beat Russia. It was just to compete with Russia. Right. And he wanted to build together a team, and he had a way about doing it. And the way that it goes through that process, the way they demonstrate that process in the movie, the way they demonstrate the bonding of the teammates in the movie, going through the hard-nosed part of his practices and how he's this gruff coach that is like, I'm going to be your coach. If you want a friend, talk to he's like talk to Craig over here, who is Craig is his assistant coach, or Doc. I don't remember we called him Doc something, but the Doc. Like, talk to them if you need a friend, but otherwise, I'm just gonna be your coach, and we're gonna, I'm gonna push you really hard, and then we're gonna represent our country. And so that journey of them, not only the relationship and the dynamics that created, but alongside of that, just the way they show how they grew over time and how the growth wasn't a straight line. And they grew for a bit, got better, then things got a little worse, then they got better, things got a little worse, things got better. And so the feelings and the emotions of that roller coaster, I think really also added to the enjoyment of the movie itself, and to the cherry on top of the cake as far as just enjoying the movie as a fan. The hockey scenes were very fun to watch.
Yeah, no, those hockey scenes, bar none, are some of the best outside of NHL hockey that you could see. And the cool thing is that, we got the chance to meet all those actors as they were portraying these individuals from the 1980 Olympics. But all the action scenes are actual former NHL players or guys that got pretty high up in the minors. So the action of play is top notch. You're seeing some really good skaters out there portraying a 1980s hockey team, which, that the hockey style that they were introducing as part of the Olympic team, it was only really ever seen from, the USSR, the Russia side of hockey. And it's an aggressive style of hockey that warrants and needs a ton of conditioning for the full length of time of the game. And yeah, it's an amazing story to see, and I love the whole team atmosphere and how he's building a team day one, and through all those tryouts, he knew who his guys were going to be, and it's just, I don't know, it's a great story. I love that you picked up on the Herb Brooks aspect of it all, of his drive for wanting to pick up and build a team out of, for the most part, a bunch of nobodies. They weren't the best talent, like he said, like when he was trying to justify to the board.
You're missing some of the best players.
I'm not looking for the best players, Craig. I'm looking for the right ones.
That speaks volume. You don't need all of the talent, 26 top guys from the NHL to be represented for that coach, for that moment.
Well, yes, and also I think that in that, and this is going into the historical facts of the movie, in that moment where the genius of Herb Brooks as a coach was to identify that he needed to create a team, and that the problem with the American way of playing hockey was to just take the most talented players, throw them together, and hope that their talent wins out. And so that and that for the Russian team, they had a team and a team philosophy and a team structure, and then put talent into that, and the combination of the two would always win out over a group of individual talented players playing all their own separate ways and not a part of a team structure of some kind. And so I thought that was really well done. And so I guess then I'm heartened to hear that it gets your seal of approval as far as how the hockey was portrayed in it, because I didn't, it's one of those things of being an ignorant fan of hockey where it's, I'm looking at the movie thinking, well, this must be how hockey is, and then it makes me think, well, maybe I should watch more hockey. I'm not going to watch more hockey, but
you
maybe
need to watch more hockey.
Maybe it makes me think, hey, maybe I should watch more hockey. But I was like, you know what? If we ever have it at a time where the U.S. team is playing the Russian team again in the Olympics, yeah, I'm probably not still going to watch.
No, come on.
Yeah, so I'm heartened to know that the action scenes were done, at least they met your satisfaction as a hockey fan, that it still seemed realistic to you, because then that tells me that the scenes pulled you into the movie as much as it pulled me in.
Those hockey scenes were so authentic in the style, but also with the gear that the guys are wearing. Like, that's the stuff that I was wearing in the 80s. The blocker that the goalie is wearing, throughout the whole movie, the mask that he's wearing, I remember seeing guys with the mask. It wasn't necessarily predominant at the child levels or the children levels, but I remember seeing guys, the adult leagues coming off, and they had that solid mask that is molded to your face, and the blocker and the pads that the goalie is wearing. That's the stuff that my brother wore, man. That stuff was like thick and heavy. That wasn't light and loafery like it is now. Like, those guys, it looks like they're wearing cardboard boxes on their legs nowadays, and they're just like able to just swing their legs around pretty easily. That stuff, man, that's like baseball quality leather. And then inside of there, because one of my brother's pads blew up and we had to sew it back together once. Inside of there, it was like this crazy amount of like matted, thick padding and horse hair and like all this other thick crap in there, man. And that stuff was heavy. I swear those each one weighed more than me as like a 6'7" porky kid. It was like, not 6'7". I was 7 years old, quite portly, and I was more round than anything. And one of those pads, they're easily 45 pounds, easy. And to see the goalie, flopping around the way that he is and the style that he was, that's the 80s. That was the late 70s and 80s style of hockey. Like, this movie is like, I don't know, it just brought back a lot of memories, a lot of sights and sounds, growing up as a child in this era of hockey.
Well, I mean, since we brought up the coach, I guess we should also take a moment to talk about some of the players. The main player in this is Jim Craig, who's played by Eddie Cahill. And then, the Rizzo was the other one that really stuck out to me as far as my head, is like the Mike Urizone. played by Patrick O'Brien Dempsey. Erizzione, played by Patrick O'Brien Dempsey, who became the captain of the team, even though he was clearly not the best player. Even in the tryouts, they were saying, "Well, I don't even know why he's here. He's not gonna make this team." He ends up being their captain and leader, who scores the goal to put him ahead in the rush at the end. And then there was like Jack, who was Michael Mantenuto. I don't know how to pronounce that name correctly. Jack O'Callahan, and how he was one that was from Boston and had the grudge against the Minnesota player for some playoff game that happened 4 years ago. And so the other aspect of that I enjoyed as a fan was that they did a decent enough job of explaining that these guys are similar enough in that they're going to be able to get along, and I'm going to use that in air quotes, in order to be on the team because they love hockey, but dissimilar enough that they really disliked each other at the beginning. And then over time, as the movie goes on gradually, and they get put through the punishing paces they have to go through, the psychological test they have at the beginning, and everything else about it, that they gel together as a team. And I was curious, though, that for me, they started to blend together into more of a team, and I started to view them that way. Were there any, either performances or players in their position or characters that you found that you identified with more than others, given your hockey experience?
Probably more of the goalie, Price or Craig. I mean, just growing up in a household of goalie mentality, there's something about goalies that the more odd they are, the better the goalie is. Okay, his reluctance to take the test. And I'm just pointing that out because, he gave his reasoning for not wanting to take the tests, but it just really shows that he's different. And it's just one of those little subtle cues that I picked up on that I could easily relate to growing up in a household of goalie mentality, that there are some differences within goalies. That you're asking somebody to stop a puck that's like nearly, I think it's like 9 ounces or 10 ounces. And you're stopping it and it's 90 miles an hour, man. And sure, you've got pads on, but you're asking somebody to do this willingly. Like it,
Do you find that then the goalie's mentality is more of a solitary mentality? Like they feel that they're separate and different from the team, or just separate, different individuals? Like, what do you mean by when you say?
Yeah, it's all of that. It's like all of the above. It's all of the above. Like, yeah, you're part of the team, absolutely. But like in baseball, when the pitcher is getting ready to throw a no-hitter, for the most part, everybody just leaves him alone. Well, the goalie doesn't, have that luxury of people always around him. So while your offense is on the other end, the goalie is all by himself with his own thoughts. And a lot of the times, those aren't thoughts that you necessarily want to be around him for a goalie. You want that guy that's kind of losing it a little bit, is towing the line of like, something might be wrong with that guy. But you don't want, you want him to be strong and willing to be a part of the team. And, Jim is, but, he's a little bit different than all the rest of his teammates.
I had not thought of that as a positive part of his personality, in that you wanted him to be different. I just felt that, as a viewer, for me, it was more this, he was different, but also he was kind of he was the star of the movie in a lot of ways. I mean, really, Kurt Russell as Coach Herb Brooks is the real star. But that, of the players, right, they dug the most into his backstory about the death of his mom and how his mom wanted him to play. And I believe his dad just wanted him to go professional, but then they, what was the great line?
I'd say no to someone who drove you to practice every day, right?
That part is, again, another area where I think this movie has that cross appeal of anyone can identify with that, whether you've done that or not. If if you had a mom who took you somewhere all the time for whatever your extracurricular thing was, you're like, yeah, she asked me to do a thing. How do I say no to that?
And then probably like the other player, and it's just more of like I don't know. To me, it's kind of like a fun factoid. Mike Erizzione, he's the captain of this team, right? And he doesn't ever play in the NHL, man. Like, he's surrounded around 8 other guys that ultimately end up, I think it's 8 others, it's 8 or 9, end up going to the NHL. And yet he's the captain of this team. And that's how special this guy is. He's the captain of a team that wins gold medal in 1980 and beats USSR, Russia. And he doesn't make it to the NHL. I mean, that's how special this guy is. And to me, that's kind of like a cool little tidbit, extra fun story, I guess, of likeness. You normally have the best player, like you were saying. Normally, the captain is your best player. This isn't the best player. This was just the guy that knew how to be with all of his other brothers and get his other brothers to listen. I think he was the first one that answered the question, what team do you play for? And he was the first one that said,
I play for the United States of America.
And it was during the punishment post a game.
Post tying the Swedes. Funny thing too is I was watching it with my wife. When he said that line, she goes, "So if he'd just said that earlier, they could have avoided all of this."
Yeah, absolutely. And that was the whole point of the question. Like, as soon as Coach asked that question, in my head, the first time I saw this movie, the second time or the third time, every time he asked that question, I'm instantly saying Team USA, no matter what college I came from or anything like that. Because he's testing everybody. Like, what team do you play for? And everybody just continued to talk about the colleges that they played for, you know? And it was like all he wanted was his team. And Mike is the first one that steps up and says, I play for Team USA.
At the end of an interesting scene of where, while I, again, not having played hockey, I did play football and other sports where, and I'd been in that situation where our team did not perform to the level that the coach wanted. And then afterwards you're running a hill, or you're running up and down, we're doing hills, or we were doing ladders on a football field, which is, same idea as what you see in this movie where they're going back and forth multiple times on the ice. But that it was interesting to me to see that in a movie of where they are going to also demonstrate, even though they did okay, they tied, which was okay, but that was still well below the level. And so then to prove a point, Coach Brooks decided to have them do this ladder drill over and over and over again, to the point that even as a viewer, you start to say, hey, I think everybody's got the point.
And that's a real drill, folks. Like, I have participated in practices after a game where that practice session, for the most part, was just that conditioning drill. It's crazy to think that your body can go through that much pain, because that's not an easy drill. That's from goal line to blue line, back to goal line to red line, back to goal line to the next blue line, back to the goal line, and then all the way to the other goal line is normally how that gets skated out. And then you start over again from the opposite end of the goal line, and then you come back, and then that's one. Okay, let's do this again.
None of that sounds fun.
No, it's not. But it's a wonderful scene though, and it's referred to as the again scene. And it's I don't know, I liked it because it brings up a lot in a player in me as you're saying, we've all been there. We've all been tortured post bad performance by some coach, mentally, physically. We've all been there. Yeah. And if it wasn't the coach, it was probably our parents. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Just kidding. It wasn't my parents.
And that's the lesson of today's episodes, kids. Sports equals anguish.
Yes.
Okay. So I think one thing that I wanted to touch on about this movie is for me in it, that there is an Adrian moment. And that I really feel that the Adrian moment for me was with Patty Brooks, who's played by Patricia Clarkson, which when I saw that the actress's name was Patricia playing Patty, I was like, well, that must have been the easiest role to remember your name.
Right. Exactly. Sorry, what's my character's name again?
Exactly. It's just a shortened version of my actual name. Got it. Okay. But like I agree that. So what stuck out to me in that. As the Adrian moment, as I defined it, as the scene where it starts off very innocently, where Patty is asking Herb to pick up one of the kids because they're going into two different places, and she expertly lets him know, hey, I can't be at two places at once. Which kid are you going to pick up? And as the viewer, he of course doesn't have time for it. And as a viewer, I'm Team Herb all the way here. I'm like, well, hey, he's coaching for the Olympic team. You just figure this out. And he kind of says, hey, you just figure it out. And then she gets upset, right? And then when she gets upset, he's like, oh, okay, well, something else is going on here. And I, as a viewer who was 100% Team Herb up to this point, go, oh, oh yeah, maybe you shouldn't have said it quite like that. Like I was
Right.
thinking that, but maybe you shouldn't have said that. So then he comes around with the typical, oh, we talked about this, and she's like, oh really, we did. Well, when did we talk about it? What did I say? How did the conversation go? And that was explained that that she was expressing I don't know if anger's not the right word. I think it was more frustration with the fact that this was not only sucking him away from everything, but that she didn't feel included in the process of the decision. And then that moment when he turns and just really, I think, expresses more than realizes, because I'm not under the impression that his character didn't always realize Patty's importance, but just expresses how the whole thing wouldn't be worth it without her at his side. And then he says, okay, well, if we didn't talk about it before, then I'm going to ask you now. Are you with me with doing this? And then I think she just really, I think all she does is just nod and grab his hand. Which as you've been married for long enough, you don't have to. Exactly. You don't have to like say a whole bunch of words to always communicate the answer to the question. But I think that's really all she does there is that, and then that gives him that moment of not only assurance of that he can still push through with what he was doing, but that also that she was with him, and I think that part of that. And why that moment is also important is because he recognized that he was coaching these kids in a way that was vastly different than the way he coached in the past. And he was coaching himself onto an island where he was being obstinate with the people in the board. He was keeping himself separate and apart from the kids, so that if Patty wasn't with him, then effectively he's on his own and no one is with him. And at that moment, when then she is now with him, I think that gives him a lot of the internal strength that has to keep going, because he knows he has to stay on the island in these other relationships.
I mean, how could I say it any better, dude? Like, that is the quintessential definition within this movie of the Adrian moment that we're seeking in our other sport movies that we've looked at. And like, here she is putting the pieces back together, and she's recognizing that he's broken. Look at the way that he was just like talking back at her and all that stuff, and all the other engagements that they've had with each other throughout the movie up until this point. She's clearly very supportive and always trying to keep him straight back online. Because I think like the other scene before that one was, he's looking over the plays and he's jotting down some notes, and I think he's looking at some film, and he's like, man, this is just really hard. And she's like, you knew this was going to be hard. Like, why are you saying that? That's that marital support that, I believe it had to have happened in real life. Like all those moments with he and his wife leading into your Adrian moment that you're defining here. There's so many great little tidbits between the two that are always there. She's there picking him up, helping him out, guaranteeing him that, hey, this is going to happen, after he gets back from the initial interview. And he's like, oh, that was kind of weird, and I was talking to all the guys and was telling them what we needed, and I just don't know, and then they have their little party, and he gets the phone call, and she's right there supporting him right after the phone call. And he's like right into work, and she's like, all right, let's do this. This is great. We have an Adrian moment.
Yes, we have an Adrian moment. Although, to me, while it felt singular, I do understand and appreciate what you're saying about her overall, about Patricia Clarkson's overall performance, where it does feel like there are multiple times when she's interacting with it where that could be, that could be an Adrian moment. Although I was. So I do understand and agree with that, in that they all could have been. I mean, I found that I was focused in on that one because I felt that he turned on that, and that the rest of it was really just a great demonstration of how that she was with him, and so he wasn't alone in this very difficult endeavor.
Right. Yeah, because like you said, he puts himself out there on an island, and she motorboats right past that island, is like, hey, I need some help, and he's like, rawr, I don't know, it is a great moment, and without that moment, I don't believe that he would have been able to pick up the pieces and keep going towards that ultimate goal of like, we want to compete against the USSR.
The second part of that as well was showing how this movie is doing a really good job of an archetype character of like, the hard nosed gruff coach that nobody understands his ways and and he's the only one that can take this ragtag bunch and turn them into a bunch of winners. And I think that it was interesting to me that there's that trope that we've seen in other movies before, and it doesn't always work. Sometimes the coach comes off as arrogant or mostly arrogant or a bit of a jerk or whatever. It's like, no, you're just a mean person and you're looking for this as an excuse. But this movie, I think, does a great job of threading that needle of, yeah, he's doing it, but they even sprinkle in enough to show you that he's doing it for a reason and not just because he's just a mean guy.
And like Craig said, his assistant coach at one point in time in the middle of the movie, the way that he's going to do this, it's going to have a meaning later on. Maybe it wasn't Craig that said it. There was somebody
Doc. Yeah,
that was Doc. Oh, that's right. Yeah, it was Doc.
Conversation with Craig and Doc. Yeah, Craig was asking, did he coach like this before? And his Doc's like, no, I've never seen him do it like this.
But all of his, that's right. So they were in the line waiting for gas and all that. Yeah, everything has a reason, which, you can, if you remember some of the little tidbits, it does end up piecing together, the whole team aspect. So like me harping on asking all the kids, hey, what team do you play on? And they're all saying the university team. Like there was a whole reason that he was asking, because he was waiting and looking for, when am I going to have, and I'm using air quotes, when am I going to have my team USA? And there was, and the purpose of his 300 question survey, there's a purpose behind that. He's trying to identify, are these kids going to be ready for what I'm getting ready to put them through?
If they're going to be able to keep making it and going on. And so, and I'm going to jump off onto a slight tangent here because I was curious to hear your thoughts about,
let's do it.
About the, when they're sitting waiting in line in gas. Waiting in line for gas. So then it talks about the gas shortage of the 70s, at least a bit. Like the movie doesn't hit you over the head with all of the economic and geopolitics of the time, but there is, of course, that this Olympics in Lake Placid, New York, were done against the backdrop of, that was when the Soviet Union first went in and invaded Afghanistan, and there was inflation. Jimmy Carter was still the president, and they had there was all the inflation, they had gas shortage, and those geopolitical things all happening at the same time, and that this movie interwove this into it, where it didn't. There's aspects of it where it had to, and aspects of it where it didn't. There was, of course, the moment where they were saying that the United States might boycott the Olympics Summer Olympics in 1980, which they ultimately end up doing, and that definitely could affect them. But then with the rest of it, so what did you think of? And did it add anything to you, interweaving all of those geopolitical things and the Jimmy Carter speeches, when you could hear Jimmy, Carter, all those speeches, so that way you would hear what people were really saying at that time, because that's just an old speech, they didn't have to hire some actor for that. But what you thought about how they interwove in what was going on geopolitically at the time.
I'll start from the beginning of the movie and really throughout. But the beginning of the movie, they're showing the 76, 77, they start showing like we're coming out of Vietnam, and they start showing some of the other geopolitical things that are going on at the very beginning as it's going by, and so, it's kind of like bringing you into the times of 79 when they starts collecting all the players to come out and doing and really starting to build the team. So it's like, I love how it kind of hits you up front to give you that this is the moment in time in which this is taking place. And then from there, you have some of the look-ins from the news, I think it was in the airport and there was a news story that came on, and, and he's chiming in on that. And I think it was when Russia invaded Afghanistan. And then, you could see some of the protests that are happening later on, and so you get some of the flavors of everything that's going on, but nobody is like really talking about what is occurring other than the flavors. And what I mean with the flavors is like the actual rolled footage of a national broadcast that was covering one of the protests in Washington, D.C. for Russia invading Afghanistan. So, we get that flavor, but none of the actors are really talking about it. So I like it from that aspect that, it's there, and it's there to help build some of the support of like why we need this team to win, and why it felt so important for Team USA to beat Russia. Not only because they were the 5 out of the last 6 Olympics they've won gold medal, because of all their accolades and all that, but really it starts building some of that emphasis around what is happening around the globe and what is happening in America at that time, with the job loss and losing, or not losing, sorry, with the shortage of gas, and what Russia was doing in Afghanistan. And so we hear it and we get all those flavors, and it's kind of discussed a little bit, but not a whole lot. But it really emphasizes that importance of us needing to win against Russia.
I agree, and I think that is a great segue to the big game. In the big game itself. So in this movie, again, one of the things I do appreciate so much about this movie is it's a straight ahead sports movie. So we have our heroes of Team USA and the big bad villains of Russia, which is 2 things I'll say about that tangentially. One is I think they did a good job of portraying them as a Goliath that needs to be defeated instead of some big villain that is trying to invade our country. And the other thing that they did leading up to the game that I don't want to gloss over is that they did a decent job of showing the initial game was a tie and all this stuff. They had to do that and how they came from behind all these different games to win them, and then finally get to this game, which was the silver medal game. It's the big game in this. Sorry, it's not the silver semifinals. It's a semifinal game.
Yeah, it's the medal round.
It's medal round. So it's semifinal. It's not the final game. So the winner of that game gets to go on and play for the gold, and that is typically lost in the story because it becomes like an afterthought of that. But that is still because the game itself was more significant than whether or not it was for a medal. But then getting to that game and what they depict in that game and how they show and demonstrate the game to me was for me definitely a huge highlight of the movie, and it really kind of started. You were on the ride up to that point, and showing everything geopolitically made it where it enhanced the stakes of the final game, where it wasn't just 2 hockey teams. It wasn't just the big lie. It was still, this is Russia. We're the United States. We have to represent our country because they're only here to show that they're dominant in this. And we need to then, defend our home turf because they're not going to come into our country and beat us in hockey. And so I think that that added everything to it and then made it just a lot of great. It was one of the several great pieces that I found about the final game.
What were some of the other aspects of the final game that you liked?
Another thing about the final game that I really enjoyed was Al Michaels is genius.
Yes, thank you.
The thing with Al Michaels in that, and I remember explaining to other people too about this movie was, that wasn't some actor that they hired to do it. These are the things that this man said at the time,
right?
And so when he sets the table stakes of the game, he goes into this amazing soliloquy about how it's more than just a game and how it's represented in 2 different countries and how Russia's been dominant for years and everything. And it's just, and then he kind of segues into his broadcast partner, whose name I don't even remember now, who then starts talking about hockey. Who's then starts talking about hockey. And I was like, I don't think you understand the greatness of what this man just the greatness of what this man just did. And his commentary throughout the game, the interspersing it into the game helps you then follow it as a viewer, and also shows that he was able to always create excitement in his announcements throughout the game, and of course has that big line at the end of the game of "Do you believe in miracles?" Yes, and that's why this is called Miracle. Exactly. Because of what Al Michaels was said at the end of the game, not because you could have had several other titles for this, like USA, Team USA versus USSR, or America versus Russia, or the greatest U.S. hockey team ever. You could have given it all sorts of other names if you wanted to, but the fact that it was named after something that the announcer says at the end of the game is just another aspect of where I felt that Al Michaels was amazing in this, even though he's not an actor. He was, just his commentary and how it still added to everything, even in a movie format.
Yeah, I'm so happy you brought that up because while we were watching the movie, I even brought it up that how cool is it that we're listening to Al Michaels' voice call the game the way that he calls the game, where he is giving you visual context through his amazing voice as to what is happening on the ice. And they were able to duplicate that in the movie. Like it's towards the end of the USSR game, and one of our players, and I can't remember, he's skating behind the goalie and he goes left and he goes right. And the way that Al Michaels says it is exactly the way that you see it, which is exactly the way that he calls the games. And it's just, it's a testament to him and his ability to be able to do something where people 24 years later, whenever they're making this movie, 20 plus years, 24 years
24
later.
years later. Yeah, it came out in 2004.
Yeah.
So yes.
So they're using his voice for the game that he called, and we're watching as if we're watching the game live in 1980. I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's just a testament to his skill sets and everything that he does. And I'm happy that you brought it up, that they used that in the movie, because they didn't have to hire an actor to sound like Al Michaels.
No, they didn't. No, they didn't. You just, basically just pay him his royalty check, and then go from there. So, yeah, the other aspect of the game as well, it builds up the drama and the tension a great deal. It shows. I feel that really the game starts off with where USA having to slay the big Goliath, but even at the end, when it becomes clear that there's a minute left, they need to win. Russia should pull the goalie, but they don't. Or even the mistake of after the first period where they took the starting goalie out, and Coach Brooks is like, hey, they just took the best goalie in the world. They just sat the best goalie in the world on the bench. And so and that is kind of that is also a testament to them. In effect, the Americans identifying, that part of it was a little bit of luck that they made that bad decision, but also that the Russian coach was unable to adjust to what he needed to do in the last couple minutes of the game to try to effectively tie it at that point, which would have been, I would imagine they'd have gone into overtime. I doubt they would have done a shootout.
Yeah, no,
for that,
no shootout then. No shootout,
so,
no shootout.
Okay, yeah, because that was one thing I didn't know, which I don't know if you I guess you would know. So then, how would they have resolved if Russia had scored at the end and they tied? Do they just go into overtime periods?
Yeah, it's another period. It's just
okay. So it's a whole period, like a whole another 15, because the periods are 15 minutes, right?
I think in Olympics. It's 15, yeah.
Yeah, so they did a whole one, not like because the NFL has those abbreviated 10-minute quarters for overtime They've just done a full whole one.
During regular season right now, if you are tied, you go into an overtime period, but it's 3 against 3. And then I think it's 5 minutes, maybe it's 10 minutes. But if you last that and it's still tied, and one goal wins, it's not the full length of the period. But so if it still remains tied, then they go into a shootout. But during playoffs, it's just an added period. And then in Olympics, it's just an added period as well.
Okay. And it's 3 against 3, which honestly brings up another thing that I realized in watching this. Well, it's another thing I realized in watching this is like, I still don't know how many hockey players were on the ice at the time.
It's 5.
So it's 5 on 5?
It's 5 plus a goalie, so it's 6. It's 6 on 6, but 5 are your active players, and your goalies are just chilling. Got it.
And then the only thing I did catch was that the lines were 3, because they called those guys the cone head, so there was a line of 3 of them, so they could rotate them in and out, but in lines of 3. And I was like, all right, I got that part.
That's because you rotate in and out your forwards. So you have your center, and then you have your wingers, your left wing and your right wing, or they're also known as forwards. So you can rotate those 3 out. So those 3, the cone heads, as they were called because of the SNL skit. And those guys were like, I don't know, they could probably complete each other's sentences. They were different folks. They were the 3 forwards that would go out there, and they would just call out the cone headline.
Tangent aside, I was sitting there trying to remember what is it we were talking about before we went on that tangent. And then I go, oh, okay, that's right. I was talking about that, the end of the movie, how the fact that the Russian coach didn't know what to do, the coaches didn't know what to do, the players really didn't know what to do. It felt to me a lot of ways too, it helped humanize them to where it turned it into what from the point of view of the sport, geopolitics aside, what it should have been was that they were a far better team, and they were beaten on this night. And that was like their one night, which even before the big game, the great speech about like, if we play them 10 times, they'll win 9, but not tonight.
Right.
So yeah, tonight's that 10th game, and then they can, and recognizing that quite honestly is probably true. Like, they can beat them in one game, but they're not winning a best of 7.
Right. No, definitely not.
Yeah, definitely not that. So then, but that the ending and that humanized them, and I really did appreciate that part of the movie where it was the thing where it's like, okay, let's bring them back to really where they belong to be, which is a dominant hockey team, not some evil empire. Even though yes, they lived in Russia, who I think was it 4 years later, Ronald Reagan called the evil empire. But they lived in he called them the evil empires. Yeah. So
right.
also as an aside, a great Rage Against the Machine album. Yeah, Evil Empire is amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
And also the nickname of the Yankees too, the New York Yankees.
Oh, really? Are they called the Evil Empire?
Yeah, they are.
That is awesome. That it brought them down to what I thought the level was appropriate for them to be, and also going back to something we talked about earlier. I felt that the movie stayed true to itself, or maybe just Coach Brooks stayed true to himself. At the end, when they win and they're all celebrating together, he runs off into the tunnel because he has to do his little celebration by himself because I'm not their friend. I haven't been their friend to this point. My goal was to push them to be here. So I'm not going to jump around and start hugging them like we're all buddy now, I don't even know that necessarily was part of his personality as much as just, sticking with the bit, staying with what brought him and then keeping it that way because, there is of course the aspect of, well, there's one more game.
Well, yes.
So he can't like be like, oh, well, let's all celebrate like we're all buddy now and everything. And then it's like, oh, well, now I've changed the dynamic, but there's still one more game. We're not done. We've done the biggest, hardest thing, but this isn't over.
I took that as like a personal win moment because with him playing on the team in the 60s and then
he made the team. He didn't play.
Right, and that's what I was going to say. You make the team and then that last week you get cut. This was such a huge moment for him because you're in the medal round, right? And then you just beat the team that you were pretty much hired for to beat. Or to compete against, and now you're going to go and face off for the gold medal. I mean, it's like all of that 20 plus years just wrapped into one quick little moment for this guy. And I agree. I think it also had a lot to do. I believe it was part of his personality. Like, I'm coach, you're player, leave me alone. I mean,
okay.
In that era, in that time. Some of the greatest coaches were like that. Like, you never really got a chance to talk to your coach. Like, Don James was known for that in, UW football. Nobody really talked to Don James. You got to talk to a coach who then talked to Don James, right? You as a player never had a one-on-one moment with the coach. And I think that embodied a lot of the 80s itself. Don James was old school, but this was like new school hockey in the 80s. And I think that was just the way that it was. Like, your coach was like the uber elite of all people, and you had to give the highest regard and respect to. Otherwise, you're going to be doing some conditional drill, which you didn't want to. So you didn't even want to speak to him. So it was easier to speak to everybody else.
One of the last things I wanted to talk about was how to recommend this movie to someone. So this is at this recording, this is a 20-year-old movie. It's a 20-year-old straight ahead hockey movie. And so it's, there's aspects of it where it is still, I feel, holds up well. It is still, fast paced and fast moving. A lot of times, older movies sometimes fall victim to being a slower pace because movies made, if they're older, there are lots of, they're made different pacing where, sometimes movies were longer and then they would let dialogue linger a lot much longer and things. And so I think this movie still has a really good pacing to it. And that it is a easy to enjoy straight ahead sports movie, which I also enjoy. But then what I was curious about is like, if you had to recommend this movie to someone who had never seen it before, how would you recommend this movie?
I mean, I hate to spin that question back onto you, but I mean, no, I do. I want to hear, especially, from your end. I mean, not being a hockey connoisseur of any sort, like how, if you going back into the days when you're looking at one of the many DVD stores that you could go to and rent DVDs.
Thanks for dating us. You mean back in the time in Blockbuster?
Back in the time of Blockbuster, Hollywood Video.
Yes, tell me about the old days, Grandpa.
So before podcast, children, there was something before the internet. VHS tapes. Let's talk about that. No, so like if you were standing there and you're like, oh, Miracle. I wonder what this is about. Like if you're standing there in Blockbuster and you have Miracle in your hand, knowing that you're not a hockey person, what's going to get you to watch this movie?
Well, me in the specific, there's a slight amount of knowledge I had. For example, I was aware of the game, so I was aware of, which we're now old enough. It's now getting long enough. In the past, like this is now 44 years ago, our relationship with Russia is very different. And so and so
oddly the same, but
well, it's coming back around, but like for now, it's still very different. Knowing the game already, that helped out some. But if I didn't know the game, which is a very possible thing now, I think I would recommend my main recommendations are, hey, it's I'd start with it's Kurt Russell. It says it's Kurt Russell in a hockey movie about an Olympic team that has to that is the massive underdogs and have to overcome another team. They overcome Russia.
There you go.
Overcome the mighty Russia, right? And that really is kind of the simple elevator pitch of the movie. And then after that you can dig into all the different various reasons of why it's great. But if I was just pitching it to someone, trying to keep it pithy, I would just do it that way.
I like it. Yeah, it's a wonderful underdog story. Yeah, no, that works. I mean, really, that's the best way to boil it down. It's, I was thinking, I love the hard-nosed coach, and I love the whole team thing. Like, if I could sit down, I don't have an elevator pitch. I don't think I'm capable of an elevator pitch for this movie.
You have to talk about it for a while.
Yeah, I would have to talk about it for a while because I really enjoy the whole team building thing. I mean, you're taking all of these individuals. Some knew each other because of tournaments and some knew each other because they played on the same college team. But for the most part, a lot of these guys didn't know each other, and they were individuals that ultimately became a team to defeat the mighty of almighty hockey entities, and it's, I don't know.
I guess now that since you turned the question back around, I've had a second to think about it. I think I would even phrase it as, it's Kurt Russell in the 1980. Kurt Russell in a story. How would I phrase it? Hang on, like this. It's Kurt Russell in the story of the 1980 U.S. Olympic hockey team, an underdog, underperforming team that had to come together to beat the mighty Russian team in the Winter Olympics.
There we go.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little rough around the edges, but that sounds good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's an elevator pitch. No,
it's an elevator pitch. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So.
It was better than mine. Like, the team. I like team stuff. Team stuff's good.
Yeah. Awesome, man, Jim. It is always great to talk about movies with you, and to everyone listening to this, thank you for downloading the show. If you would like to continue the conversation about this or any other sports movie, contact us on our Discord page at truestory.fm. Please like, rate, review, and most importantly, share this podcast with anyone you know that loves sports and movies.